Hey guys, we're back at Dirty D's Garage, and today we're going to be installing the Killer Bee aftermarket oil pan on the 2018 STI. We also have the Killer Bee pickup tube for in the oil pan, and then we have the Killer Bee windage tray. You could look at that, all stainless steel. In the process, we're going to be replacing our stock motor mounts with the Group N motor mount kits. And while dropping the headers, we're going to put new gaskets in just to keep things sealed up. But not quite loud enough for us. We're going to go ahead and order some more parts. Okay, so here's the brand new Killer Bee oil pan for the STI. Comes with a little pamphlet there. Okay, so this pan is supposed to hold 30% more oil. There's a diagram to install the pickup tube. Comes with all the necessary hardware. Go ahead and open that up. Lots of little goods there. There's our adapter to install our oil temperature sensor. That's going to go in the 1/2 inch NPT, which is clearly marked, and then this will be for our drain. Ouch. Sure. Alright, so we're going to remove our Killer Bee headers to gain access to our oil pan. So the block nuts are 14 millimeters. We're gonna go ahead and crack these off of here now. All right then, so we're going to remove the motor mounts since we're going to be replacing them anyhow. We're going to remove those so that we can lift the engine up to reach the back bolts of the oil pan. So these are 14 millimeter right up in here, and one on this side right up in here. Yep, they're both kind of right behind where the header mounts on the factory heads here. So we've removed the motor mount bolts and the transmission mount bolts. So there's just two of those near the back. So now we're going to lift the engine and transmission up. Now, the way we're going to do that is by putting a block of wood under the transmission. So luckily we have like 18 floor jacks in here. So we're going to go ahead and do that and see if we can't get the old motor mounts out. Okay, so this is the serious reminder part of the video where I tell you, we're going to move the engine up and the transmission. Please keep in mind that you still have everything attached to the car. Anything that you didn't physically take off of the motor, coolant hoses, refrigerant hoses and lines, gas lines, the exhaust, electrical, everything is still fastened to the motor that you're about to move about 1.5 inches. So just move it slow, pay attention to what you're doing, listen to sounds. You also have, up top here's the intercooler, so it only has a little bit of clearance there as we're coming up. So pay attention. It'll save you a lot of headache down the road where you broke something, now you gotta fix half the motor. Just pay attention, really. Okay, so we have the car up high enough. We're going to have a look here, and this is all the higher you really have to take it. There's our motor mount stud that comes down through. It's just past the lip of the frame. The other side is well up in because the motor kind of twisted a little bit one way more than the other. So this side's up actually a little bit higher than the passenger side over here. But either way, they're both just above the cross member. So that's all we really need. Let me get you turned upside down, right side up. Here we are looking in at the car. Passenger side here, just up. Now we are on the little tranny pan just underneath the transmission, and I got a big old block of wood to absorb any type of weird impact there. A lot of little noises and a little bit of grunt, but it's up. The intercooler is very tight to the top. Everything is stretched and moved, so we don't want to go any further than we have to make this happen. Okay, so now that we're ready to move on to replacing the motor mounts, we're gonna do half of that step. So we're gonna remove them and then leave them out until we're done with the oil pan. Now, if you're not doing an oil pan, just move on to reinstalling them. So we took out the stud nut that goes up into the actual motor mount, and then the motor mount frame bolt, we got the front one. You know, so now the back ones we can get from behind, in behind, now that the motor's jacked up. So please be careful, keeping in mind that you have it held up with a floor jack. You might want to find a way to get a jack stand under something to prevent this from falling and smashing a finger or losing a hand. Safety is key here. We don't want you guys losing too many fingers, then you can't punch in our channel to watch our ridiculous videos. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and pull these bolts out of the motor mounts. I'm actually going to crawl further under the car and come in from behind. We are about right under the feet of the passenger here. So the bolt we're looking for is right there. Let me zoom in on that. Right there is the one we're reaching for. So we're going to go ahead and pull that out. I don't know how I'm going to be able to show that. I'm just going to be fighting in there, so that's probably what you're going to have to do. Okay, so here I am under the passenger side motor mount. It's up in there. I'm using an extended handled 3/8 ratchet with a 14 miller 9/16 on the end, and I can only go a little bit at a time, but it is working. So if the straight shot, you can see the end of the ratchet there. That's all I'm able to do, but I am able to get it. It's a straight shot. It's not. This is a flex head ratchet, but I don't have it flexed. It's just straight in. So a shorter one would probably be about here. So you probably could use that if you had one. So once you get it loose enough, then you're gonna have to finger it and get it out that way. Okay, so we got the passenger side loose, and we're gonna go ahead and pick it up. The front part of the mount is gonna drop downward slightly to bring the back up, and then you can just kind of, I'm barely holding it, it's just gonna slide right out. Just kind of goes up and in at an angle, and then the back part of the car before it drops downward. Just a lot of twitching. You'll get it. Okay, so now we're on the driver's side, and here's the axle. Right up there's our bolt that we're looking for. blocking the light. Here it is. Okay, here we go. Okay, we got the driver's side bolts out. This one literally just falls out. It's that easy. Whoop. I want to show you an easy trick to get the back oil pan bolts. They're 10 millimeter. There's just a few of them, and as you can see, they're packed in there pretty tight. You can't really get in there. So what I'm using is an impact. You don't have to use the impact, but long extension with a 1/4 inch swivel and a 1/4 inch drive 10 millimeter socket. And it gets in there real easy. You just get under there and done, and that's it. So piece of cake. Okay, now that the bolts are all out around the oil pan, we're going to use a decent hefty screwdriver and go right here against the mount for the motor mount. We're going to kind of pry upwards. You kind of have to watch the end of the screwdriver where it's going, but that'll give you enough leverage to start breaking the seal. So there went a little bit. I'll probably have to move to the other side and do the same thing over here. So then we're gonna have to work a screwdriver in the whole way around and just pop it loose. So just be careful hammering on the motor if you're choosing to tap it. Just tap lightly. But there, we're flexing it enough that we can work in another screwdriver and go from there. Okay, so the bolts are all out. I just worked the screwdriver along the driver's side, just tapping it in a little bit till I could, break the seal, and just the whole length of the driver's side. And I got to the back, gave it a good pry, and it popped down the back. Stuck it in the front and gave it a pry, and it popped down. And then the dipstick tube will actually pop out once you drop the back of the pan down. So if you pull on it, it'll just pop out of there. Okay, we just got it off the car. I wanted to go over some differences of the old versus the new. Obviously you can see very nice precision made unit. The biggest thing that I see on the old one is how much oil still stays in the pan even after you take the plug out. Now we have this quick drain fitting on here that the driver insists on having. Now I took that out to be able to put a block of wood in there, and after taking it out I realized I was getting a lot of fluid still out of the pan, and that's because one, the quick drain actually does not allow for complete drainage to the bottom of the pan. The second issue is that the pan itself is not designed to be able to drain all of the fluid out. So if you look, the bung itself is up a good centimeter, and that allows for gunk to just build up in the bottom. There's no way to get it out if it's on the car. So definitely don't like that. The new one, as you can see, they actually engineered it so every spec, come on camera, let's get a little better lighting here. There's the drain on the right. So they actually threw it, it's perfectly against the bottom. Perfectly against the bottom. Alright guys, so one problem with the factory oil pan is that you can never truly drain the oil out. Now I dropped this straight down out of the car and put it on the counter. So what is in here is actually what was left from after we drained the oil, and we did it just like we're going to change the oil. So what's in there is always going to be in there, and so we're going to pour it into a cup and see how much of this stuff is left in and what it looks like. I don't know if you can see that, but that is pretty black. There's about 3 to 4 ounces so far. Man, that is nasty. Nasty. That is like pudding. Okay. So here is the factory pickup tube, factory windage tray. So we're going to remove the bolts along here. There's 3 there. And then there's 3 here. 1, 2, 3. And then the 2 here. So the new one actually has 1 here and over there to support this from bouncing around left and right, and it's a little bit lower to drop into that new pan. So we're going to go ahead and remove the pickup tube and the windage tray. Everything's 10 millimeter. Alright, so going over the hardware, these are the outside bolts that mount the oil pan up to place. Spacer. Now this has an O-ring here. We don't want to lose that. The other side mates up with the O-ring that's already on the dipstick tube. I'm sorry, the pickup tube. So that's going to mate up there. That gets tightened together. There's also the 2 spacers that go on here that also get mounted up. So that spaces everything properly down into the pan. The rest of the bolts, these go up with lock washers to hold everything in place for the drop tube. That's why they have the lock washers on them. And then the other ones that have the flange on them are going to hold the spacers and the flange in place for the supports. That's pretty much everything. These are the old bolts out of the old oil pan. And then these are the new bolts that we're going to be using in the new oil pan. So a little bit different, definitely longer. This is what they supply with the new oil pan. The old ones actually do not fit properly if you try to squeeze them in. Some of them might fit in there, but they're not going to grab enough because they're not long enough due to the thicker flange. And some of them actually hit the edge. These back ones have a slot made just for them, so they're pretty snug. I wouldn't recommend trying to reuse the old ones. However, we're going to need to use 2 of the ones that came out of the oil compartment for use with the windage tray. The windage tray does not come with 2 bolts for the back. They give you the ones for the center, which is for that and that on the support of the drop tube. So we're gonna put this windage tray up, but we needed 2 additional bolts from our old pan and windage tray. So the new windage tray fits perfectly in the grooves. Let me get it situated here. So it actually fits perfectly up in, so that's going to prevent a lot more splashing from happening. So that fits perfectly in there, but the back ones here and here did not have any bolts provided with the unit. So these ones are going to have, this one and this one are going to have the bolts provided with the drop tube, but these ones we're going to use the old bolts. Alright, so you want to make sure you scrape the gasket off really good, and make sure you scrape around the inside of the oil area here, so that you don't end up with any particles going into your new oil pan. Before we mount up the new oil pan, we'll make sure this is real dry. So we're going to wipe it down again before we mount that up, but we're going to go ahead and put the pickup tube on. We already put the 2 back bolts in the windage tray, so we're going to go ahead and do the next set here with the oil pickup tube, which is going to go up in here like so, but it's going to have the spacers in there as well. Now the pickup part itself uses the blue screws with the lock washers added on. So we're going to go ahead and feed those up through. Now, if you don't have a 5mm hex or Allen or whatever you want to call it, you can use a T30 socket as well, which is what we're going to use. These get torqued to 7.5 foot-pounds, and then the pan bolts get torqued to 5.
The zoom magnification on this thing's pretty insane.
Yeah. If you can get it to focus just right, it works pretty good. Sometimes it throws a fit when you're trying to get it to focus. Alright, so now we're going to apply the ultra black RTV to the brand new oil pan. Go ahead and spin that on. I'm going to use scissors to cut this. I'm going to go about half as wide as the flange on the oil pan. Then I'm going to squeeze this down a little flatter to make it a little easier to apply a nice ribbon around there. Cut a little bit extra off of there. Nice wide tip there. Try to get the same thickness the whole way around. And we'll come back around and get the outer edges of the screws as well. That's where you apply the fast forward mode.
Yep.
And we're gonna go up in on the back first to get over the pickup, and then I'm actually gonna try to get the back slid backwards a little bit to miss the front cooler tube, and then we'll get it up in place, and we're gonna try to put this in all at the same time. So here we go.
One fell swoop.
There's the back. Watch the tube on the front. Clear of that. So this is a little tricky here. Trying to get that in. It kind of bounces around on you a little bit. Now I have one on my long extension ready to put in. This one running into it just starts to squoosh out. I'm going to try to get multiple screws in first. I'm just using a long 3/8 extension from a socket set with a T30. It's actually a 1/4 inch drive T30 to get these started. Make sure it squishes out just a little on the front. Pretty good. I need to get one further back here, that way they're all even for now. And we have to let this sit for an hour to cure up a little bit, and then we torque it to spec. I'm gonna start this one by hand, I think. Okay, so it's been an hour since we put the black RTV on the oil pan, and we need to go ahead and tighten these. Don't crank them until they're gonna snap or strip, but when you're tightening them, you need to go in a crisscross pattern. So if you're tightening this one, go across from it, go over here, go over here. Don't just go around, because you're going to end up with a wrinkle or you know, a weird spot in your gasket, and that's going to create leaks. Alright, so we got all the screws tightened, and the way I got into the back was with a 1/4" drive T30. I'm not sure if you can see that or not.
I got it.
This is one that has a hole in the center. It's just used for whatever, but I used a 1/4" swivel, and then a little bit longer wrench 3/8 drive ratchet. So this actually fits pretty good with the 1/4" drive socket. It can get right up against the side of the pan back there. Then there's only 4 of them, but you can get your hand in alongside from the driver's side and kind of line it up, and then just feel around with it, and that went pretty good actually. So it only took me maybe about 5 minutes to get all 4 of them in. The one closest to the driver's side didn't want to start perfectly, but once I felt that it was lined up right and started, I just kind of gave it a little pop, and then it threaded right in then. Other than that, no problems. So now we can go ahead and put the new motor mounts in and drop it down, and we're gonna have to wait about 24 hours before we put any oil in it, according to the manufacturer of the RTV silicone. So we'll go ahead and get the new motor mounts and get those in. Alright, so this is the old motor mount, still assembled just off the car. We do have to pull the nuts off and reuse the nuts. Now the new one, they are marked just the same here. L is for the driver's side. Right there's L. This is already a new passenger side assembled, has an R on it. So that's the longest part here, is going to match up with the block. So we're going to take the old 14mm or 9/16 nuts off with the dead battery and put those on here. Still dead, it didn't charge. That's a little tighter than the last one. You're not supposed to watch how I'm doing this. Oh, that one is tight. So we're gonna get a bigger battery. Okay, so we're gonna do the passenger side motor mount. The block part is gonna go towards the front of the car. So this part's a little bit wider here than it is here. That's gonna go towards the front of the car. I'm gonna kind of go in with the back side up to be able to get the bolt kind of aimed where it needs to go, and just hop it up and over. Now that's partially lined up. I'm gonna get this one started. And go in from behind to get the back one. Get it fairly snug, and then I'll go in from the back. Oh, this will be very fun.
Let me turn on the X-ray vision filter here.
X-ray vision.
Yep. Car ray vision.
And you gotta twist your arm backwards and just kind of feel it.
Oh no!
Oh no!
This is where you fast forward over this part.
Yeah.
No time at all.
Yeah. Oh. Now we're the One more issue you're going to run into with the Killer Bee headers if you wrap them is when you change the oil, you're going to have a problem with them smoking, because when you take the filter off, all the oil saturates right into the wrap. You can use a rag or something like that and stuff it in there when you take the filter out. But if you get any little bit in that wrap, it's gonna smoke like crazy after you fire it up. So at this point we got the oil pan on, filled up. We're just letting it come up to temperature to make sure we don't have any leaks. We've waited 24 hours and we're currently about 18 psi and 100 degrees. So the new hardware versus the old hardware, these are all oil pan gaskets, and the pan gasket. Alright, so as far as the hardware goes, the old bolts that came out of the oil pan versus the new bolts that come out of the oil